I'm Josh Liston from On the Bubble podcast, an oral history of television fandom, part of the Gunna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other awesome geeky shows at gunnageeknetwork.com.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue 158, and we are covering the Ragin' Cajun of the Marvel world, one Remy Etienne LeBeau Gambit, and present level patron Matt selected this. Someone was going to get around to picking Gambit one of these days. It was bound to happen. He's got a lot of stuff going on. He's kind of a fascinating character. I also know that there are a not insignificant portion of fans that just really don't like him. Gambit is a particularly polarizing character among the X-Men fandom for reasons I'm not 100% clear on. And full disclosure, and I've said this before, I'm not big on the X-Men books. I've read a handful of them. I know of them, but the X-Men were never really my bag as a Marvel reader. So I can't claim any real expertise or knowledge of exactly what it is about Gambit that may have upset people. But I know at least even among our patrons, even among our present level patrons, Ariel can't stand him. She hates him. And I think I made a joke at one point on social media that for this upcoming season, I was like, well, I think Ariel's going to be boycotting this episode. I don't know if that's true or not, but
Yeah, I don't know. I have been more affiliated with people that really enjoy the characters, so whoops.
no, listen, everybody's got their favorites and everybody has characters that they just plain don't like. I mean, I'm kind of hard pressed right now to think of characters that I just really don't like, or at least they kind of turn me off if they're in a book that I'm reading. I try to be as open-minded as I can, but I understand some people, very passionate readers. We know from experience that Ariel is one of them. She has very clear ideas about the characters. And so she's not a fan of Gambit. So Ariel, I hope you enjoy this episode anyway. For everybody else, I hope you enjoy it. So we are just going to get right to it, starting as we always do with our background. So Gambit, Remy Etienne LeBeau, was created by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee in Uncanny X-Men number 266, August 1990. He also had a cameo appearance in an X-Men annual that may have come out the month before, but chronologically speaking, that annual didn't happen until after Uncanny 266. So there's a bit of a debate over what is his true first appearance. Is it August 1990 or is it June or July of 1990? It's really just a cameo, but his full-fledged intro is August of 1990, which also kind of surprised me because growing up, as I'm sure many of us did, at least of our age cohort, with the X-Men animated series and Gambit being one of the key members of that team, I had kind of assumed he was around for longer than that because the show came out in 92.
Yeah.
So he was only a character for 2 years and they put him in the show. I just guess maybe I thought he would have been in the canon for longer than that, but they were like, no, he's a big name character or at least a well-received character. Let's put him in there.
Yeah, it's good forward thinking in terms of marketing, I guess.
Yeah. So Matt, our present level patron, selected this one. And this first part of the background was actually one of the precursors to the issues, which, you know, if this is a Matt episode, you know, he's very eloquent and lengthy in his explanation of the issues. So this beginning part of the background is a pretty solid summary of about 10 to 15 years of Gambit stories. So, you know how we've done a lot of characters whose circumstances have come back around to it's not his fault, but it is his problem? It's a Docism. Gambit's definitely a twist on that. Let's run down the list. Kidnapped as an infant and raised by a society of thieves who brought him up with a moral compass that was most certainly not in line with the rest of the world, wound up homeless, captured by an immortal mutant and sold into slavery, got roped into an arranged marriage with Belladonna to end a centuries-old blood feud between the Thieves Guild and the Assassins Guild, and wound up killing the brother of his bride-to-be in a duel on his wedding day, was exiled from his home in New Orleans, found out he had a mutant power that grew so powerful it wouldn't let him touch anything without blowing it up, had no choice but to go to Mr. Sinister to give him brain surgery just to save his life, gets a simple innocuous job to do in return, assembles some mercenaries to locate the Morlock community, has no ideas the mercenaries have orders to kill all of the Morlocks. That's where Matt's summary ends, which we'll pick up then when we get into the issues momentarily, but to run down the rest of his background. So after that, he encounters a powerless Storm who was out thieving, and the two of them connected. And so Aurora brought him to meet the X-Men. Logan didn't trust him, so the two of them had a duel, which Gambit ended up winning. So he served as an X-Man for some time until he was captured by Magneto and Sabretooth, and Rogue's kiss revealed the memory of the Morlock Massacre, and the fallout led to him being kicked off the team. So he later rejoined the team after Rogue went searching for him. And we didn't really get into the whole Gambit and Rogue thing. If you want more info on that, you should go back and listen to our Rogue episode. And it's also kind of funny because a little bit of it's not a spoiler, just an advance announcement. This week is Gambit and next week is Mystique. So back-to-back weeks, we're covering Rogue's husband and her mother. It just kind of worked out that way, but I would advise you to go back and listen to the Rogue episode because you're going to get a lot of clues and stuff, and we will be referencing things from that episode and just the general interactions with Rogue for this week and next week. So after a battle with Destiny, he and Rogue were depowered, so they moved to California to explore their relationship. Both ended up regaining their powers and rejoining the X-Men, but when Gambit was temporarily blinded, he began lashing out at Rogue, who left him. Mystique then joined the team undercover as another shapeshifter, and she revealed herself to Gambit as a version of Rogue that he could actually touch. Although Rogue was angry about it, Gambit never actually pursued anything. And that is a whole other thing. We can definitely touch on that next week. So he submitted himself to Apocalypse in an effort to infiltrate the team, but the transformation brainwashed him and he became the Fourth Horseman, Death. And after Apocalypse's defeat, he has returned to normal with the help of Mr. Sinister. Now, the next 15 years of X-Men continuity and stories involving Gambit are really of two things. One, he and Rogue are on again, off again. Two, something comes up about Gambit's past, leads the rest of the X-Men to kind of not trust him until he eventually works his way back into their good graces, and then he has to go do a job for somebody or something from his past comes up and he's not trusted, and team kind of puts him in a distance. That's about 15 years worth of X-Men stories right there. Yada, yada, yada. He and Rogue get married after Kitty Pryde backs out of her wedding to Colossus. You can go back and listen to the Colossus episode on that. So Gambit decides to propose on the spot. They spend their honeymoon protecting the bioengineered daughter of Charles Xavier and Lalandra, who was a sentient egg. Hashtag
Because comics.
And then they get teleported to the Mojo-verse where they have to fight their way out for the amusement of Mojo and his viewers. We didn't really talk about that in the Mojo episode, but go back and listen to that one just because that one's a friggin' riot. So, as I said, we don't normally like to yada yada, but even for 30 years, 32 years at this point of characters, there's really only a handful of types of stories that Gambit is involved in. Maybe that's why people don't like it. I don't know. I could just be spitballing. But in any case, now we're going to get into the issues. So, the first issue in Matt's explanation, and again, going back to yada yada, he has no idea the mercenaries have orders to kill all the Morlocks. This is where it picks up again. That is a lot of really bad luck for one person, but Gambit tortures and blames himself for way more of it than he should. He didn't want to fight Belladonna's brother, but was bound to by the traditions of the clans. He didn't want to leave Belladonna and New Orleans, but had to, or there would be all-out war. He didn't want to get in bed with Mr. Sinister, but he was the only person he knew that could save his life. He certainly didn't want to play any part in a genocide and tried everything he could to stop it while it was happening, but at the time, he genuinely believed the job was just to locate them. With regards to everything he did in his past, most of it is not his fault, and way less of it is his problem than the amount he tends to torture himself with. On a scale of 0 to Cyclops, his moral culpability for the things he's done with his life doesn't even come close to the level of guilt he feels for it. This is one of the things that I did know about the character is he's very much tortured by everything he does in his past. And that's why I said so many of his stories revolve around something or someone from Gambit's past coming back to haunt him. And then this causes an amount of distrust with the team. But to Matt's point, so much of what he beats himself up over is not really entirely his fault, or at least only maybe tangentially so.
You got it. So what happens when bad things happen around you, and they seem to happen a lot? Humans are very good at applying blame to themselves. We very selfishly, but for survival's sake, think that we are the cause of so many natural events, or we consider ourselves to be influential in more things than you would expect. And it's because the locus of control is way more easy to tolerate than the idea of chaos, randomness, things like that. And without that level of control, we would become, some of us, potentially terrified that the next random thing that happens could kill us or injure us or just lead to more bad things. And we have some magical thinking in terms of momentum, that if one bad thing has happened, okay, so be it. That's not that bad. A second bad thing happens, not feeling so good. And what's that saying that I know I say it, I think you say it, and I know my wife says it, and I hear it at work all the time. Those bad things happen in threes. Like, well, who come up with that? Come on. There is no rule that says that has to happen, but we all do it. We all have that mindset. And so imagine that you've not only thought that for that moment it's happening, but imagine that you've had enough happen that you think that's how life's always going to be. You stop thinking that this is something that's involving lots and lots of other people that each are making their own unique choices, and start thinking that it's a Truman Show. You're really the star. And except you're not the star, you must be the villain because everything's turning out bad. We're switching out correlation and causation. I'm noticing a lot of irrational thoughts with what I'm describing here. And it's very easy for me to say this talking outside, looking in. But I'll admit I've been there. I've had those times in my life where I just assumed that my very existence was leading to negative things. And that's a depressing way to be. I've also had the idea that the next thing that I did would cause something bad to happen, and that's a lot of anxiety. And if it happens too much, we've talked about this plenty of times with learned helplessness. Like, well, F it. I mean, if bad things are going to happen anyway, then what effort should I put into to change it? So, yeah, all of these things can really screw up how you process reality if you're not careful. Gambit doesn't get to that point, thank goodness, but in terms of the emotional side of things and the build related to that, it's clear that he got impacted and hard. Now, does that mean that it makes him less of a likable character? I don't know about that. Most characters that I could think of that have that type of trauma end up having some endearing qualities. And actually, I know we're going to get into that as we get into the other issues.
Definitely. And when you were talking about the bad things come in threes, I was thinking, yeah, that sounds like my mom. That sounds like me a lot. Sounds like a lot of superstitious folks that I know. It's confirmation bias in the world. And there's another term for it where it's not just confirmation bias, but it's the thing where if you are thinking about something, you start to see it everywhere.
Yeah.
I know when I was shopping for a particular model of car, I would start to see like every fourth car was the one that I wanted to get. And you
That's
just
right.
notice them everywhere. I forget what the term is for that. Look it up and I'll add it in the show notes. But it's very similar to that mental confirmation bias where once you start thinking about something, it's there and it's always prevalent. So I can absolutely understand that, as I'm sure many of our listeners can, empathize with Remy over everything that he's gone through, where it's, well, this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened. And what's the common denominator? Me. So I must be the problem. And I also don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that we've all felt that at various points in our life, that whether you're going through a rough patch, it could be short term. It could, unfortunately, be a long-term depression thing where you feel that you are the cause of a whole host of things that objectively have very little to do with you and are certainly not caused by you, but because your locus of mind is focused around the things that happen to you and you do not have that objectivity to see the external creations and causes of all of these events, your perception is skewed. And that's where it's important to have a trusted friend, a family member, a therapist, somebody to say to you, is it really your fault or is it X, Y, and Z that's happening to you? I know when I was growing up, I would always come home and tell my mom, everybody was picking on me. Who's everybody? Well, it was Ryan. Okay. Who else? Maybe Dave was laughing. Okay, that was two. Who else? I guess that's it. So are Ryan and Dave everybody? No. Okay. Then everybody wasn't picking on you. Kind of explain it like that. Not necessarily invalidate. Well, that was a whole other thing. But in any case, you don't want to invalidate the feelings, but you also want to provide perspective and clarification to these things and be able to say to somebody, hey, I understand you feel that this is happening to you. Let's talk this through. Let's pull that thread a little bit and see what happens. Hopefully you don't get them spiraling downward into a worse mindset, because I'm sure from your experience that can certainly happen. But it is a difficult mindset to break without the help of, as I said, someone trusted who can help you with that. And Better Worse Gambit does have those people, but I guess it's a situation where he's just been burned too many times, or maybe just by the very nature of his childhood or lack thereof and everything else. He's not exactly the most trusting person. Maybe Rogue can get through to him. And even then it's a crapshoot. So that's actually kind of the third issue that we'll get into in a little bit. I just realized that looking at the show notes, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but yes, we'll get into that. See, we do prep for the show, but sometimes things go off the rails. So, second issue, deflection and evasiveness. Oh my goodness. Remy Labeau raises keeping people at arm's length with deflection and evasiveness to an absolute art form. And when you're a monument to male fan service, streetwise slick talking bad boy with a mutant power that lets you kinetically excite the heart rate and neurotransmitters of other people and charm the metaphorical and often literal pants off of them, that is really not a hard thing to do. Remy is one of those people you can have an hours-long conversation with, tell you all sorts of personal details, and walk away not even realizing he didn't tell you a single thing about himself. His teammates, Wolverine and Bishop in particular, are the wisest to act and treat him with the most suspicion, but really all of the X-Men know him to some extent. He's closer to some of them than others. Everyone likes him. No one really seems to have a problem with having him on the team, but apart from Rogue, obviously no one really implicitly trusts him, especially after the truth about his connection to Mr. Sinister and the Marauders comes out. And this is what I was saying before, that inevitably a Gambit-centered story revolves around loss of trust and something metaphorically or literally blowing up in somebody's face.
I absolutely adore the way Matt described this, because there are plenty of people, not necessarily in a negative way, that epitomize this every day. I see this so commonly. I act this so commonly. Yeah, I didn't mean to admit that. The idea that you can find superficial ways to connect with just about anybody in the world. And I apologize when I use the term superficial. I do mean it is not meant to be a lifelong lasting bond. I don't mean superficial as in unimportant, because it is vital for us to have these types of connections depending on what we're doing. If you're in the service industry, you better be able to at least say what you're supposed to say to a customer and do what you're supposed to do for your job and get it done in a way that the transaction happens smoothly. That's the basics of it for anybody. But when it comes to relationships, people usually want more. And another way that I could put this is, what happens if you always want it to be at that service and transactional level rather than getting closer for several reasons. And in comics, we see it all the time. To say that you want to protect the people around you, it's easier to make sure that they don't get too close in the first place. After all, there's a lot of pain that I'm sure Gambit has to share. And on one hand, misery loves company, pain shared is pain lessened, whatever you want to say. That's one way to look at it. The other is, if I don't let you get close in the first place, then that means you don't have to experience it ever, at least in once again, that irrational mind. So it's a defense mechanism, but not a defense mechanism necessarily for Gambit protecting himself. Although, yes, it can be. It's more to protect the other person. It can actually be seen as something that, in a very perverse way, is altruistic. And when it's used improperly, it leads to people recognizing that you are the ultimate manipulator. You are just looking to say just enough that people recognize you're human, but not enough to think that you care. That's a hard balance to strike. And nobody's perfect with it. I think that the fact that he's had such practice with it, because when you are in situations of danger where you legitimately have life and death on the line if you say something wrong, you learn how to couch your words. You learn how to make people feel good in the moment, even if it means that in the long run, they're not even going to make the type of connection that they would have otherwise if you had just let them know truly emotionally how you felt. It is fascinating at how intelligence, wit, charm, ability, utility, all of those things can mask intimacy. It's amazing how much of a patchwork you can put together with those other skills and just drop the emotion out of it. So I do think, if we're going to now consider the point that you made with people not liking Gambit, I think this one is pretty darn big, because when people think that they're getting somebody who at its worst is like a sleazy, like almost salesman-y, just, and when I say salesman, obviously people in sales, you're wonderful. Keep the marketing, do what you do. It's great. You really have a wonderful service. I don't mean it that way. I'm talking the stereotype used car salesman kind of BS. At its worst, yeah, it's the type of thing that becomes its own barrier to just interaction. But below that, there are always those people that you know that there's something else, and they're always just keeping it hidden, and you never know if you'll ever get to it, and they just usually won't let you. I'm noticing how much these dovetail into each other.
Yeah, there's a lot of interplay with this character in particular. All I will say in response to a lot of what you said is communicate honestly, people. We say it all the time on the show. Just be honest. Now, honest and tact need to go together hand in hand, because so many times people claim that, oh, I'm a real honest person. No, you're an asshole. But honesty in communication can be a very wonderful and freeing thing. It may rub some people the wrong way, and that's why you have to have the confidence in yourself and what it is that you're saying to be honest, and be willing to accept whatever the consequences of that honesty is. That if you're speaking honestly to somebody and they're upset by that, you have to be willing to live with the consequences of that. And I think that's why a lot of people lie. It's because maybe they want to be honest, but they're afraid of the consequences. So rather than be truthful and say, well, I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings, or this person may not like me anymore. It comes down to insecurity. People would lie to be liked, then be honest and have people not like them. Some people are very strong at that and don't mind being honest and having people like them for who they are rather than pretend to like them for something that they're not. But that's unfortunately not everybody. And that's a topic for obviously a whole other podcast and show. So last issue, and we kind of talked about it within the first two, Third issue is related to the second one, Remy's own massive trust issues with other people. It's completely 100% understandable, given everything Remy went through in his childhood and teenage years, that he'd be extremely wary about making himself vulnerable around anyone. It's a lot. The man didn't have the loving, supportive upbringing most of us have. He's understandably a jaded, cynical man who expects the worst from people until they show him otherwise. But the only person he's ever really genuinely let into his life is Rogue, and it was a very long, very rocky, and very painful road getting there. Gambit guards his heart tighter than Fort Knox and seems very comfortable with the fact.
So, Matt, you need to get out of my AOL Instant Messenger. You need to just stop digging into my high school yearbooks and, like, dang, dude. This one cut deep. Look, obviously I'm being facetious in a way, but no, the idea that for whatever reason, if a person has made a decision that they don't want someone to enter their lives, that is their right. The idea that you do that with absolutely everybody can lead to a very painful existence. So there has to be some sort of balance. Here's the part that I think much of society gets skewed. That range is wider than any of us are comfortable accepting. Yes, it's bad for it to be zero. It is unlikely that it's going to be billions. So if you're simply looking to be an influencer and think that you have the ultimate in terms of a truly fulfilling and wonderful life that way, it's going to be a rude awakening at some point. If you think that you have successfully crafted your life as a hermit in a shack on a deserted island and you somehow don't have a volleyball named Wilson, then I don't think it's going to turn out as well as you think. Above and beyond that, yeah, the world's your oyster. There's got to be some level that you're going to be comfortable with, whatever that number is. And no, it's not a magic number. Yes, it's going to fluctuate over time. Yes, people are going to be in and out of your lives. That's another part of this that I think gets skewed. Sometimes the idea that you have someone that you've known for your entire life and that is the only person that is there for you and all of that. And what happens if they go away? Well, maybe there is someone else. Or maybe there's more than one person. Oh my goodness, the possibilities. So someone like Gambit, who kept it incredibly tight for so long and a person pierces the veil, that can be beyond intimidating. That's a threat. That is the type of response that's going to potentially lead to more problems because you're backed into a corner. You're not sure if this person is going to do more harm than good. And his natural defense mechanisms, as we said, can be very aggressive, but also very charming. And some people like that mix and they pursue further. And that might put him off more, but it may double down on that other person and you end up in this huge tug of war. So when people ask how certain relationships may develop and say, how could they have survived all of this? Or how do you get over that first hump where it seemed like things were so adversarial? It's because tension itself can lead to growth. And thankfully, with someone like Rogue, and if you want to really find out where Rogue's coming from with this, listen to that episode. It's clear that he has the capability of doing this. The question is, how often and how much does he want to? For some people, it's going to be the idea that this opens an opportunity for many more possibilities. And for others, it's like, nah, pretty much one and done. And that'll be that. If any of you find yourself at any level at any point when it comes to this spectrum of interactions and relationships, this is not to shame you. This is to allow you to know that whatever happens next or whatever happens in terms of how many people at any given time, it can be okay. But here's the real key part to this. Let the other person in on that part of it too. It doesn't have to be a secret. Trust me. I really know this one. I really do. It's okay. It really will be okay. You don't have to be in the corner saying, oh God, why am I here?
Not speaking from experience there, Doc, at all? Nope.
Not in the slightest.
Nope, definitely not. It's hard. trust is such an incredibly fragile thing. And, that truism about trust takes years to build and a second to break. And it's true for a reason, because it absolutely is. So I understand to a degree why people would be, shall we say, less forthcoming than others. But the optimist in me always says, but when you find those people in your life, and when you have that connection, and when you have that trust, it is so incredibly worth it. It is such a wonderful and uplifting experience. And I would truly urge people to go and find it if you can. Now, I'm not saying go ahead and trust every Tom, Dick, and Harry you come across. That's the opposite end of the spectrum, and I get that. But as I said, having people in your life that you can trust, that you can lean on, that you can be honest with, and that can be honest with you, that reciprocate that trust, is a joy that I find hard to describe at times. And I consider myself incredibly fortunate. And I'm also fully aware that this is incredibly rare, of how many people I have in my life that I can trust. And I think to some extent it goes back to kind of that second point, and even the first one, that honesty of self, that if you are unabashedly yourself, you may not be for everybody. My sister says this all the time. She goes, I am not for everybody, but the people that I am for love me. And you have to be okay with that first part. You can't be all things to all people, but the people that are there for the good and the bad, the thick and thin, those ride or die folks, if you have them in your life, really, truly count your blessings and be grateful that they're there, because it makes life easier knowing that you can have those people there to help bring you up if you're going through a rough patch, and vice versa. There's a joy in that connection, and it is uplifting in a way that I cannot put into words. And I'm glad Remy has that with Rogue. It's a shame that someone as charming and witty as him can't find that kind of connection with more people, because I think he's got a lot to give if he just lets that wall down just a little bit, maybe just a little bit more, and then a little bit more. It doesn't happen overnight, but it can happen. And as I said, it's wonderful when it does. So all that being said, we are going to take a break. We're going to plug a couple of shows. And when we get back, we will get into treatment. So stick around.
Hi, I'm Linda.
And I'm Jane.
And we have a brand new podcast called Bedknobs and Broomflicks, where we talk about witches of the entertainment world. From the horror movies Warlock, Suspiria, The Witch, and The Blair Witch Project,
To the more comedic or whimsical, such as Harry Potter, Hocus Pocus, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and The Blair Witch Project.
no movie, TV show, or book is off limits.
All witches, man witches, sorry warlocks, we're not calling you that, witches brews, witches of history, familiars, and witch-like activity will be discussed as we laugh and have fun talking about the wonderful world of witches.
So join us every other week for some fun witchy talk.
All witches welcome.
Hey there, I'm Chris from the Geek Peak Podcast, here with my two co-hosts, Trent.
What up?
And Brandon.
Yo, yo.
Here at the Geek Peak, we strive to provide you the best content from all across the pop culture multiverse.
Think of us as your content concierge, seeking out all the best movies, TV, games, and music to save your valuable time.
We have a different adult beverage every week, and we like to keep things light and fresh, so come hang out with us.
So check us out on all your favorite podcasting platforms. That's Geek Peak.
Like a mountain!
And check out our site at geekpeakpod.com.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Whitley, and you're listening to Capes on the Couch.
And we're back, so let's get into treatment. So the treatment theme here is truth in deception. And starting as we always do with in-universe. Doc, how are you going to treat Remy Labeau?
So this is going to sound a little weird, but the whole point of this is he is so good at adapting to situations. He's a bit of a I'm not talking shapeshifter, but he's a bit of a chameleon, a social chameleon. He knows how to blend in. He knows how to get you to a certain point where he can manipulate. And I have to avoid that. The problem is he's so more skilled at doing that as many people, and I know I'm not giving diagnoses here, but as many people with certain, I think he has some personality pathologies going on that I don't want to play his game, but I do want to play games. What I mean is I want external rules. I want something that is socially acceptable where you don't know all the information of the other person and it gets revealed over time through random choices and chance opportunities. That's how all games are set up. That's the whole point. And I don't care if you want to make this like in person, if you wanted somehow to use the danger room where maybe it's not physical, but just something that is engaging us physically and mentally at the same time, because he definitely has that bent. Spoiler alert, kind of get into that with the skit. But just something where I know that there's these other outside factors, which he clearly is always uncomfortable with. He doesn't like the idea that other things are in control. But knowing that and knowing that we're both sharing that experience, I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but I know I do. When you're playing a game with someone, even if it's a stranger, you get to know them in certain ways, intellectually, emotionally, maybe not their background, not always, but in ways that you wouldn't otherwise. And that's what I want. That's what I want to find out. And I don't think I'll get there any other way. I don't think just asking him basic questions is really going to do that.
Oh, it's definitely not, because as we've indicated, he's not really going to answer them honestly anyway. So what you have to do, and this is not always easy, is get those moments where maybe you can catch him off guard, maybe you present him with something that he wasn't expecting, kind of throw him off his game, again, if that's possible. And that's where you learn. It's not going to be learning through questions. It's going to be learning through moments. We've all had that situation where somebody does something or says something, reacts in a particular way, and you go, I just learned something about you that I did not know. Could be good, could be not good, but it's always an interesting and eye-opening experience. So out of universe, Matt says, quite honestly and eloquently, not really a stretch to find real-world equivalents to this, man. I imagine most people who go to treatment can be intensely guarded and wary about sharing details about themselves. I imagine a lot of patients have things in their past they're not proud of and that they torture themselves with. I also imagine it can be like a chess match where one person is playing for a stalemate and trying to frustrate the other person into surrender when you're trying to get through to them. And having just had numerous conversations with you over the years, even with no personally identifying information available, you've told me plenty of situations where this is definitely the case. How do you get through to them, if at all?
So this may come as a surprise based on what I just said about the in-universe treatment. Rarely, but once in a while, if I notice that a person is conscious and intentionally doing that, then I call it out. I will say, by the way, I just want to let you know, I have to still do my job, even if you win. And when I say the word win, that usually, if I use it properly, will startle the person, because that's the whole point. This isn't about one of us winning. We're in this together. The idea is for you to be better than what you were before in terms of your symptoms or your situation or whatever it is. So if I'm saying that, I'm not your opponent. You don't have to treat me that way. That's only if the person I think is doing it just very clearly from the start. And I usually get that if the person has been coerced into getting treatment in the first place. That's where it's most common. People that are seeking treatment, they may want to guide the narrative. They may want to go down a specific avenue about what's going on, in which case, I don't really have as much of a choice. If that's what they're going to consider to be the most important issue, most important topic or whatever, unless there's something that I think is life-threatening, I'm going to go with it. And I'm going to see what I can piece out here and there. But I usually just want to make sure the person knows that we can't do everything all the time. And I'm not trying to bend reality to your whim. some people are looking for, and I'll relate it back to how Gambit was presented. Some people are looking for someone to be the savior and say, the world is something that I can save you from. And that would be a lie. Because if a lot of bad things have happened, I still have to say that a lot of bad things have happened. My job is to point out that they didn't happen, quote unquote, to you. The events were going to happen, and you may have been a victim. You may have played a role. You may have been randomly involved. You may have simply experienced. You may have witnessed. Whatever the actual details are, I want to piece that out and put back some of those enabling, meaning empowering kind of thoughts and phrases that will allow that person to process it better. So that instead of the idea that the world is a horrible place because so many bad things have happened to me or I caused them, and therefore that makes me a bad person, et cetera, it can be. There are many unfortunate things that happen in the world that I am aware of and experienced, not in a vacuum, knowing that there are many other things that have happened that allowed me to survive to this point. And I have opportunities and have other experiences. Oh my goodness, heaven forbid we can get to that other side. That may take a while. Like, hey, there are other positive things that have happened too, that you have actually considered for yourself to be positive, but you never bring up because all this other stuff you feel has to outweigh it, as if it's this magical scale that you're trying to balance out, which isn't necessary at all. And then heaven forbid it's the idea that, well, see, but these things keep happening, and they give the next example that happened last week or whatever. And, I just realized I haven't done this in a long time, but I'll do it because, hey, it's a podcast, we're entertainment, and it's an entertaining thing. If the person has a coin, I'll let them use their coin, not mine, because they got to trust it. And I'll say, okay, can you do me a favor? Can you just examine it? Can you look at it? And like, okay, yeah, fine, whatever. I'm like, so I'm saying, is it a legitimate coin? Yeah, okay. Flip it, Don't call it, just flip it, and they do. It's like, okay, that came up heads, and they keep flipping it, whatever. Let them do it 10 times. I'll say, okay, so what did it come out to be? And I'll just make up a number. Let's say it came out heads 2, tails 8. And I'm like, see, that ought to tell you, those coins, they can't be trusted. And when you put it that way, the person, as you just did, like they'll usually give a smirk or give like, because they're like, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, exactly, it doesn't. But that's what your brain is doing with everything around you. And that can help just ease the conversation a bit, I'm not trying to say that you're wrong about the world. I'm trying to say that the world doesn't care about what you think about it. Things are just happening. It's the opposite of what many people need to do. Many people, they feel like they need to have more influence in the world. With people like this, it's like, no, you got to pull it back without crushing their sense of self-worth. It's like, you're not as important as you think you are. It's okay. You could still be you, which sometimes can even allow them to open up because they realize, well, wait a minute. If I'm not that person that's causing all this torture and terror in the world, then even if I do screw up, it's not going to be that bad. And things can come full circle. And the number of people that I've had where I've gotten to that point, like directly with my influence in a group of sessions, because I work in a hospital, doesn't happen. But I can say that I've had people that I've seen months later in an outpatient program, or even just randomly will send us notes and let us know how they're doing. And I can hear and if they're there, or I can read the difference that they've made for themselves. And it's a wonderful thing.
It gets back to that confirmation bias again, to bring it back to what you were saying before, where so they're focused on all the negative things and ignoring all of the positive things, or at least maybe even neutral things that have happened. This handful of things that have happened over the past couple of weeks. Okay. But it's a handful of isolated incidents. Meanwhile, the other 97.4% of their life is neutral or positive, but that's not where their focus is. And it involves, or I would imagine it would involve for you, reframing from that perspective to not always go immediately to the negative, to not always focus on the horrible things. I find that is not always easy, even as a parent, where if my kid is, especially my son, is particularly focused on something and he's very needy. We hear a lot of parents say all the time, oh, my kid is being very needy, very needy. It's because we're coming at it from our perspective of, I have all these things to do and my child is bothering me or they're annoying me or what have you. If you reframe it from the child's perspective, the child is seeking connection that they're clearly missing. That if they were comfortable with the amount of connection they had, they wouldn't be going over the top for it. But if they're constantly going, mommy, 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 daddy, 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 play with me, play with me, play with me, it's because they need that connection and they lack the emotional maturity to be able to say, hey, these are the things that I need. I saw one parent influencer said that she taught her kids to say, mommy, I need attention, or I want attention right now. And she said, so many people give her flack for that. But she goes, why? It's an honest statement. Rather than beat around the bush and be annoying with all these things, now I have to figure out what it is that you're looking for in an effort to give you attention. Just tell me, mommy, I need attention right now, or I want some attention right now. Okay. That's a clear, direct, open, honest communication from a child that needs to be, I don't want to say rewarded, but honored and respected. Why can't we as adults have those types of conversations? Why can't we say to each other, listen, I'm in a low place right now. I need some attention. I'm having a rough go of things. I would appreciate if you were to pay attention to me. Spouses, talk to your partners. Say, if you are feeling a little distant, I have conversations with my wife. I'll say, hey, listen, I'm feeling a little distant right now. Maybe we can, like reconnect tonight. It's hard, with a newborn, obviously. But if you're just open and forthright with your partner or with anybody, really, to be able to say, hey, I need attention right now. I am craving connection. And again, this comes back to trust and hoping that at least, within the confines of a committed relationship, the other person is going to reciprocate and understand that. But to be able to say that and have them go, okay, I understand, and reward you with that attention that you're seeking, that creates closeness, that builds the bridge, that makes the relationship stronger. We all need that. Every single one of us needs attention at some point. We just need to be able to honestly say that and say that to be fair, to the right people and get that attention and get that reciprocation. And so I would imagine, bringing it back to some of the stuff that we're discussing, that people in these types of situations many times are looking for attention. And that's not a bad thing. We demonize that because we don't want to pay them mind. We say, it's great, you need attention, but not from me. It's like NIMBY type of thing. Yeah, that's great that you want the attention, but not from me. Sometimes got to give to get. You want the attention, you have to be expected to give it. And you reciprocate, and that's how society works. And that's how we all get along. So, as I have indicated previously, I've hopefully will not be embarrassing myself with the accent when I attempt Cajun. It is not an easy accent to get into. It is an easy accent to butcher. And I just hope that I don't do the equivalent of Kevin Costner in Prince of Thieves, where I'm slipping in and out of this thing very, very quickly. And you just go, what? Here, it's not that bad. Here, you weren't even trying. So I watched a lot of Cajun videos. I listened to Cajun podcasts. I even at one point considered seeing if I could find a Cajun podcaster to play Gambit so that I would just say, hey, here's an authentic Cajun. Listen to them. Couldn't find any, at least not within time. So apologies in advance for whatever it is that's about to come out of my mouth. But here's what happens when we get Gambit on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Gambit. I'm Dr. Issues.
Bonjour, Doc.
So what can I help you with?
Nothing. Yeah, I was just joshing you. I figured you liked that one.
Sometimes.
Well, I heard you were cool.
Not exactly the life of the party. Sorry.
Something ain't right here. Well, you wearing a wire or something? You know what? I can short this real quick.
No. I'll admit, you're right, but not for any nefarious reason. I was told things too.
No, she told me she ain't told you nothing.
No, not anything bad. This is tough. I'm being vague because lately I've been too loose in my descriptions of others, and in your case, I was told to keep quiet, but then I can't discuss a relationship if I don't talk about the other person, but they probably don't want me telling everything, but I know that you know, so it's complicated.
Sherry? Oh, she know better. Listen, you trying, I'm buying. That's why I'm here. I mean, she clearly only told you what you need to know. Sorry for snapping at you like that.
I'm trying to say that I've been told that you value privacy. I should have just done my usual introduction about confidentiality, but no, I had to play it off like I'm some sort of mastermind interrogator. I get like this when I don't think someone will open up to me.
Well, listen, you got me in the door. I mean, that more than most. I mean, you ain't coming around my part anytime soon. I just got things on my mind.
Go ahead.
So, how do you get things out of your head without surgery?
Say again?
So I don't like talking about all the evil business, if you get my drift. I just got to get rid of it. So if Mr. King get it done and he ain't trying again, you hear me? I ain't going back there. Then I figure I should go to someone that's of the mind, but not really of the mind, like Charles say too.
I'm not sure I say anything. In fact, I tend to listen.
No, see, it's simple. I need you to help me so I don't let stuff I want to forget bother me so much or make me forget it. Either way, c'est bon.
Well, if it were that simple, would you have gone through the effort to deal with it in the first place?
Touché.
Anyway, your natural tendency seems to push things down, suppress them so much that it actually accomplishes the opposite effect. So you don't have the memory itself in your daily conscience, but the amount of energy necessary to keep it that way with even the tiniest hint or reminder. I mean, all that stuff, it's got to go somewhere. It how do I put this? It builds up until...
Boom. I know. Just like the power. It's kind of funny how the physical and the mental come together like that. It's synergy.
We got a term for that. Psychosomatic.
Psychokinetic.
Psychosomatic kinetic synergy.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh, man, I think we just added to the mental health lexicon there.
Well, there you go. Glad I could help you there. So what else can I do for you?
Man, it's cool. Work is... Wait, hold on. You want the help, okay? Not me. Why are you trying to make it sound like you're giving me therapy?
I'm just trying to loosen you up there, Doc. I mean, you're so uptight. It's good to see you laugh. Call me crazy. I think you should do it more.
You realize that for you to make progress, you're not going to be able to rest on a good moment with a stranger as the ultimate win.
Well, it was worth a shot.
All right. It's obvious you came to the conclusion about your powers and all that stuff with your psyche a long time ago. I'll admit, I give it validation. You're trying to play me like a puppet and just get along with you so I can rubber stamp your style. And don't get me wrong, your style has flair, charm, wit, but there's got to be more than that.
Ooh, and I thought you had no gate in you, trying to bite my head off. Look at you. You got yourself a real backbone.
I'm serious. Are you always this way? Just charming and conning your way through life?
It's only a con if I don't believe it.
So you're happy anyway. Then what's the point of forgetting something that you're acting like it doesn't even bother you, but then you said that's what it really does? I can't play games like this.
You need a better poker face, son.
I actually enjoy poker. The logic, probability, psychology, uncertainty. Only way the story gets told is at least two people are willing to see the hand through to the end.
That's pretty deep. That's really philosophical. You should write a book there. You got a sharp mind on you, Doc.
And so do you. That's why I know you'll let me lose a few hands to you.
Wait, what? You, me, play? Oh, come on, Doc. You know you don't want to smoke. You're going to lose your office. You ain't careful. I figure we playing with what? Some fake chips?
Yeah.
All right. Low stakes. I'm in. I hope you keep up with Omaha High Low because I feel like we could...
Nope. You don't choose. I choose. All right? Blind man's bluff.
So just face reading? One card on the forehead? All right, let's see.
Just to let you know, 2 rounds of betting. Each turn, you have to give me 1 fact about yourself.
Well, that's pretty cool because I'll get to know you.
Well. And I don't have to say anything.
That ain't fair. I mean, for real, that ain't fair. You can't rig a game and expect me to play.
The real pot isn't the chips. If you win, you can end the session and never come back. After all, you wouldn't want to hang out with a loser like me, right?
Bet. And if I lose?
I give you feedback on what may actually help you because I'll take your information as genuine no matter what.
So no matter what, if I play this the way that I want, I get what I want. Even if I lie and it hurt, laissez le bon temps brûler.
Funny how that works out.
All right, all in. Ain't gonna be no second bet. Fact for the only round is, if I didn't trust her, you would see you put the equivalent of a bomb right in my hands.
Call. And I had a queen.
Jack. You would have called with anything. Even with a threat like that?
What threat? It was the truth, right? And yes, I would have.
See, I knew it. You got too many tells.
Well, I guess we got a lot to learn from each other. I'll let you call the next game then.
So we really gonna make this a thing then?
Only if you're willing to be a regular at the table.
Better than a couch, you can bet on that.
Huh, I thought you say, I guarantee or something like that.
Doc, no Cajuns say that. Except maybe Justin Wilson, rest his soul. I'd like to think that wasn't too bad. That was better than Scott Bakula and NCIS New Orleans.
I'm not the one to judge. And I also want to make an apology to anyone. I have a bad habit where I end up mimicking, or mirroring is probably more accurate, because mimicking would imply I'm doing it intentionally, what I hear. And in this one, because of family background, it gets a little more pronounced. So I wasn't trying to mock an accent there if it came through. So
yeah, there were just a couple points where I heard you weren't quite going full Cajun, but you definitely had a little bit more of a drawl to you. And I do it too. I pick up accents, or I will shift a little bit, much to your point, mirroring. My wife always jokes she knows when I've been on the phone with certain family members, because I'll get off and all of a sudden I sound like a Sopranos character, because the North Jersey Italian just kind of comes out, and like the way that I speak, and all of a sudden, like, certain cousins from my mother's side and stuff. And all of a sudden I get off the phone, and then I'll be talking to her for like 20 minutes afterwards. And she's like, "You were just on the phone with your cousin, weren't you?" "Yeah, my cousin Paulie." "Why?" She goes, "Yeah, because you sound like, a Goomba." And I was like, "Oh, well, yeah, okay. It happens." But I mean, listen, that's how we talk to each other. It's kind of one of those, "Hey, cousin, hey, how you doing? Hey, all right. Hey, oh, hey." Listen, some stereotypes are true. That's all I'm saying. It's just North Jersey Italians, we have a certain flair to us. Recommended reading, the Mr. and Mrs. X story or series. I believe that was Kelly Thompson writing, or any of the Rogue and Gambit minis. I think there have been at least 2, plus Gambit has had a couple of minis. Rogue has had a mini or 2, and I think we referenced that in her episode. But it's all kind of interrelated with each other. And he was on X-Force at one point, but I'm focusing more on Gambit personally. I think those are good stories, particularly the Mr. and Mrs. X. I thoroughly enjoyed that. They just got married, and then they're off on their honeymoon trying to relax, and it doesn't actually work for them. So next episodes, as I said, next week we're covering Mystique. So we go from Rogue's husband to her mother, and then Poison Ivy, which will be a lot of fun. And I'm working on a guest for that one. And then Namor to tie in with Black Panther. And that's a bit of a tie-in to the Sue Storm episode that we had a couple weeks ago. So we've got some really good stuff, some creator content coming up on our Patreon. Doc and I are booking, well, I'll rephrase that. Doc and I are going to be talking to a lot of creators. I'm the one doing the booking. Full disclosure. I'm the one handling all the booking.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of creator content that's going to be coming out that's exclusive to Patreon. So if you're not already subscribed, go to patreon.com/capesonthecouch, or links in the show notes, and subscribe. $1, $3, or $5 will get you access to a ton of content. We'll be posting it on social media as well. Interviews with some really cool creators, some big names, some indie stuff left and right. We'll see what happens. Maybe some stuff will make it to the main feed. Maybe it won't. You'll just have to subscribe to the Patreon to find out. In the meantime, all of our episodes are available on our website, capesonthecouch.com. And you can also check out the other shows on the Gonna Geek network. You can go to gonnageek.com and see the other amazing shows in the network, like Play Comics, which Doc was just on. And I am going to be recording actually tomorrow night, the night after we record this. I'm going to be recording a spot on there talking with Chris about some video games. You can go and check out the recent Legends of Shields run episodes where I was talking with the rest of the regulars about She-Hulk, and they want me now back for Werewolf by Night, which I haven't checked out yet, but I definitely need to. And you can find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Capes on the Couch. I promise I will be getting more TikTok videos out. I know I said I was going to be doing more. It's time. And that's something I don't have. So apologies for TikTokers. I will get more stuff out soon, more videos talking about various aspects. So I think that's going to wrap it up. And Doc, what say you?
I know that it can be dangerous to have, charged situations that are too close to you, but trust me, trying to be isolating your whole life is just a horrible gambit to take.
For Doc Issues, I am Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.